Hello, Dom. How are we doing?
Hello, Tom. How's it going? I'm good, thank you.
Good to hear. Good to hear. How does it feel to be on the podcast? Have you been on one before?
I don't think I have actually ever been on a podcast. I've done like radio interviews, but I don't feel like I've been on a podcast. So no, thank you for inviting me.
Well, no, thank you for taking the time to come on. I know we've been trying to organise this for the last couple of weeks, but either one of us has been busy or it's been a very, because it's been very hectic, hasn't it, really?
It has. It's a very busy, busy time at university at the moment.
You mentioned about you've been on radio before. How was that?
Oh, it's scary because it's that like it was on like Radio Devon, like BBC local radio and stuff, but it's live and you do worry about saying something you shouldn't, even though the audience may not be the biggest. It's still sort of quite a nerve-wracking thing, knowing you're being broadcast out to different people around the county and stuff. But
Do you mean it's like not a swear word, like try not to swear sort of thing?
Exactly. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but yeah, it still could be quite an interesting experience. I'm sure people would never forget if I did do that sort of thing.
Yeah. How is it? It's quite different, isn't it, really, being on camera? Because you're normally behind the scenes or behind the camera sort of thing. How is your process of that? How have you got into filmmaking?
Do you mean like how I find being in front of a camera or talking in front of a camera, or how I got into filmmaking in general?
I'd say filmmaking in general.
So I wasn't one of those kids who really played around with cameras like you hear like Steven Spielberg's, like I was shooting films when I was 8. That wasn't really me. It was probably more, I guess I've always been creative, in that I liked art and stuff, but filmmaking sort of came a bit later on for me. It started like editing family holiday videos on like Windows Movie Maker. Very simple stuff, even just with maybe still images to begin with. And then I remember sort of the first, what I would loosely call proper film that I made was during an A-level project where it was a lightsaber fight between me and my friend in my garden. So that was the first time where there was a very, I say, loose story to it. But it's the first time I really edited a film and I did some very basic sort of lightsaber effects. I mean, the film's sort of pretty cringeworthy. It's sort of like there's like tripods in the background of shots and stuff. But it's still something that I'm kind of look back on with fondness. Because like I said, it's my first film and you've got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, you do. I think we mentioned it actually when we're setting up for this, how you look back on where you started and how it sort of makes you cringe a little bit. I mean, I remember my first film, if you will. It was a documentary in my first year of uni. We and a friend were doing a documentary type of video. And I actually had no idea what I was doing with the camera. I'm not going to lie, I didn't have to change the ISO, the shutter speed, frame rate or anything. I was just pointing and shooting. And some of the photos and the videos I took even were really overexposed. And I remember we had to do this documentary for a network, and it was going to be at like an assembly sort of thing where people would be asking you questions about what it was like. And I remember when we edited it together and put it in and watched it, I actually just cringing the whole entire time. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just sort of trying to center it out sort of thing. But yeah, it's nice to see where you start and then how you progressed. I feel like if you don't look back and cringe on it, then you haven't really changed or you haven't really improved, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. I mean, like I said, you've got to start somewhere. Even if you saw like world famous filmmakers now, if you were to see their early films, they'd probably feel exactly the same. It's sort of part of the learning process, and you sort of have to make those early films in order to know what doesn't work, in order to, make better films, hopefully, in the end of it.
Yeah, because you've done what, a music video?
I've done music videos, I've done musicals, I've done dramas, I've covered a lot of different stuff in my films.
Well, what would you say is the most challenging out of all of those?
It was my musical film, which is called Between the Lines. It was sort of a ridiculously ambitious project. It was a short film, sort of 15 minutes long, but we shot for 15 odd days, which for a short film is a lot. Like some of those, to be fair, were like half days. But even so, it's like it was just a massive, massive undertaking. Like so many different locations, big cast and crew, there was like kids involved. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of stress, but it's definitely the most fun that I've had when making a film as well.
Definitely being on set is quite a good laugh, especially when you have bloopers and outtakes and stuff, and then you end up more or less appreciating the stress or the lack of sleep that you've had, sort of thing. I remember when we did it for the dissertation or the second year filmmaking module, when we're doing, like, I know this doesn't sound like much, but like 6-7 hour shoots sort of thing, and you're going late into the night, it's freezing cold sort of thing, and do you know what, you just crack jokes and it just really lightens the mood. Did you ever find yourself doing that?
Definitely, I think like filmmaking, it can be stressful at most of the time, but if you surround yourself with a good group of people who you get on well with, then it makes it so much fun. And like I said, like people will be willing to go those extra hours and go into the early hours of the morning filming if you sort of treat people well and you get on well with them. But yeah, I've been really lucky on like all the films that I've done. I've always got to work with like the most amazing cast and crew. There's never been any major dramas or falling outs. Touch wood. Yeah, touch wood. So yeah, no, I have been really lucky, but it does go a long way who you're working with.
It really does, and it's good that you'll be able to bring that experience, to the students here. And how have you actually got to like get to Exeter in the first place, like the university?
I knew David, so like David Talas, who teaches on the course. We'd made 2 music videos together in the past, and like he's someone I always have known from the local Devon filmmaker scene. And he was like on the year you were in your second year, he was like, Dom, I need some help teaching. I think he was doing the masters at the same time, so he needed someone else to sort of help. So he approached me. I'd never taught in my life before, and it was just one of those, sure, why not? I'll give it a go and see how it works out. And that was sort of 2.5 years ago. So yeah, it's my sort of third university year, as it were. So it's good, loving it.
Good, that's good. It's interesting, isn't it, working with students who, are quite inexperienced sort of thing, but you're able to offer them like a guidance, and you're shaping their future. And I feel like you get like a really good internal feeling that you're helping these people, going in such a long way. And, maybe 20, 30 years time, they'll look back on it and be like, do you remember when Dom showed me how to do colour grading sort of thing? It's
That'd be nice.
It's really humbling in a way, isn't it, really, to have that impact on people?
It is. Like, I find like one of the things that I find most fascinating is getting to hear all about the different projects they're working on. And like you see them from right in the early stages of like in the second year when they're sort of pitching their ideas, and obviously they pick their favourites, and some of them get to be made and stuff. It's sort of really interesting to be a part of that whole process from start to like going through the story with them and like rough cut screenings till the submission and then marking it. It's sort of like in about 3 to 4 months, if that, you sort of go on this whole journey to see a film being made, and it is quite nice that you sort of hopefully get to offer useful thoughts along the way.
It's kind of like that film journey, isn't it, really? You start off and then you get the conflict, which is like everyone coming to you for like ideas and questions and how to, use the equipment and any feedback for their script, and it comes towards the end where you have these screenings sort of thing. So it is quite nice, like you said, a little journey.
Yeah, no, I love being part of it, and I find like I do the screening at the end, it sort of makes it all worthwhile. I think seeing your work on a big screen and like screened with like the other films that have been made that year, I think is quite a nice way to sort of end the module and sort of a celebration of everyone's hard work. Because like you know yourself, it's not easy making a short film. There's a lot of stages to it. There's definitely a lot of ups and downs in that process. So it's like just making a film and finishing it at the end of the day is sort of a good achievement in itself, I think.
It really is. It's that thing about having the portfolio, isn't it, really? I think looking back, when you're older, much older, and then looking back on life and seeing like what you've done sort of thing, you're more likely to remember, making a short film for your dissertation or part of the second year filmmaking module than you are, for me, about writing an essay. That's what I found looking back on it. I made a couple of mistakes, but I don't regret it. I had a fantastic experience really working with the people that I did and being able to produce something that all comes from your imagination in a way, doesn't it, really, or from what you've been influenced from sort of thing.
I think it's good because you can make something you're really passionate about, and it's sort of, I think that's great that it's not often in life you get complete free reign to do essentially what you want, which is kind of what you do. Especially on the creative film dissertation on the third year, you sort of, as long as your idea is sort of legal, you can, you can pretty much, you can basically do what you want, and that's quite a freeing thing. Because maybe if you were to choose film like as a career, you may ultimately get to write and direct your own projects, but a lot of the time you're going to be sort of commissioned by people or employed by them, and they're sort of the ones who are going to be sort of more directing you to do what they want you to do. Even going all the way up to Hollywood, that's still the case. If a big studio backs you, then they'd probably have the final say on what the film is and the finished cut of it, not the director, which is an experience which I haven't had yet, but because I've always had creative or complete creative control over my films. And so if I do keep making films, then it will sort of be, I'm sure it will come at one point where I don't have that complete creative freedom, and that'll be an interesting day, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like it would be an honour, wouldn't it, be to have one of those big studios backing you?
I know, wouldn't it? It's what you got to keep. It's what you got to keep aiming for, really. Like, there's not for every Steven Spielberg who makes Jaws at 27. It's not everyone sort of breaks through so young. You find like many film directors will take, like Ridley Scott made Alien when he was 40. It's sort of, there's not sort of a, you have to do it by your early 20s, otherwise you're a failure type thing. So everyone takes their own time to get where they want to be, I think.
Well, I was saying this to the previous guest, Tom Langley. We talked about the role of social media and how it makes you feel more like a failure in the way, especially things like Instagram or LinkedIn, and how everyone's sort of, getting ahead in life sort of thing. And it goes back to what you said about it doesn't really matter when you make that, if you do get that breakthrough, but it doesn't really matter what age, because some people never do. There's for all the people that we do know and have heard about, how many people have never made it, or given up too early.
Well, that's it. If you give up, then you never know kind of thing, do you? That's the thing. But, social media, it can be really difficult when you see lots of people achieving success. And when you think, I spent way more time working on my film, and it's just, ultimately, it can be luck of the draw. Like the right film being made at the right time, just getting into one festival, and then you're away. It's just like life. It is just can be luck of the moment, really.
Yeah. Have you ever had a film at a festival yourself?
Most of my films have gone on to the short festival circuit with sort of varying degrees of success. It's sort of, the festival circuit's an interesting conundrum, because it's sort of, you can end up spending a lot of money sort of just submitting your film in order for someone to reject it, which is an odd feeling. And it's sort of like, it's one of my personal bugbears is when like film festivals don't give any feedback on why they have rejected your film. It's sort of, if I'm giving you like 10, 20 quid or whatever to watch my film and not show it at the festival, the least you could do is maybe just send an email about why it wasn't chosen, and so it could help me learn what mistakes I made, and like how maybe I could improve that on a future project.
It must be quite hard, like gut wrenching in a way. Sometimes you're so looking forward to submitting this to a festival. Like you said, you paid your money, and then all you get is a rejection notice, and that's it.
It can be very disheartening. I'm not gonna lie. It's like some festivals you sort of hope you may get in, whether like local ones to Devon, but like some are sort of your big Oscar BAFTA qualifiers when they're sort of more difficult to get in, and it's sort of more of a wish rather than a guarantee. But it's all part of the process.
Do you have a favourite film?
Of mine?
Yeah.
Or in general?
Oh, yeah, okay. No, we'll make that a two-part question. So first of all, of all time, and that's not your own films, something you've seen maybe on the big screen or on a smaller TV, like would you have a favourite film?
Well, I always give two answers for different reasons. One is The Shawshank Redemption. It feels like an obvious choice. It's like the number one film on IMDb. But I just feel like it is the perfect film. I don't think there's anything that I could fault in it, like the perfect cast, like cinematography, direction, writing. I think it's one of those films where it just all came together to make a brilliant thing. And again, my second choice is really obvious again, but Lord of the Rings. Um, sort of watching the making of sort of DVD extras, like the extended editions for those films, that was probably what really made me take an interest in filmmaking and like considering it as a career. So it just looked like a lot of fun, to be honest. And sort of, I think Peter Jackson described it as sort of making the biggest home movie in the world, which I always quite liked as a quote. When it's like, even on this production, which is like hundreds of millions of dollars to make type thing, you can still have that fun, intimate family feel. And I think that definitely comes across in the films. It's like you don't really see or hear anyone sort of bad-mouthing their experience making Lord of the Rings. Like all of the cast, I think, generally had a good time. And I do think that translates onto camera, which is definitely something I try and make in my own films, like make sure everyone does have a good time making it.
Yeah, well, it definitely helps with the filmmaking process because you could have people that clash and it just makes it longer, takes longer to then resolve conflicts, whereas that time spent resolving that conflict could be shooting your film and getting on with it, sort of thing. So yeah, it's also a good reminder to always try your best to be kind to those on set as well.
No, definitely. It can be challenging when, like, as a director, you got so many different thoughts like running through your mind in terms of like, oh, the light's running out. I've got these 5 shots or whatever to do. I'm gonna have to quickly rethink how to do it and getting really stressed. But it's sort of trying to remain calm in those situations and sort of don't mess people around. Um, but yeah, I always try and treat people as well as I possibly can.
But you always get those stories, don't you? Really, that some people, unfortunately, and even in the big studio world, sort of thing, they get treated wrongly, sort of thing, and they come back and look back on when they reflect on it in interviews and stuff, how they talk about how hard the process was, or they had a massive clash with certain actors, sort of thing. I think an interesting one for me that I found out from like interviews and stuff was in Game of Thrones. Have you seen?
Mm-hmm.
It's Cersei and one of the actors. I think it's Bronwyn is his name.
Oh yes, yes.
They
I know what
both
you mean.
both of the actors actually have a restraining order against each other. I'm pretty sure it's
Yes.
what I've read. It was like that is crazy when you think about it.
I think they were in a relationship or something which didn't end well. So they obviously had scenes together, but they refused to film them together. They always had to be like shot separately and then added in later, which is an interesting thing. But yeah, it's not quite come to that on any of my films at the moment, thankfully.
Yeah. And then the second part of that question I asked loaded, and what about your favourite personal film that you've made?
See, again, it's tricky because like a lot of my films, they're like the babies, and I sort of like them for different reasons. So I'm gonna have to pick 2 again. Sorry. So one was called Fort Box, which was filmed in 2016 in my hometown, and that essentially sort of revolved around building a cardboard box fort out of 3,000 boxes. It was like a big community event. We had 250 people come along to help build this fort. It was mental. It was a very long, stressful day. But like the end result was incredibly sort of satisfying. The fact that I did manage to somehow organise this event as well as organise the film, where we built this fort. And like yes, I had lots of people from the local community come and help build it. So that was quite satisfying. And then like Between the Lines, my musical film, I've already mentioned. Like I said, incredibly stressful, but it was like by far the most fun I've had making a film. I've got lots of good memories from that shoot, all like 15 days of it.
Do you have any films coming up or in the making?
So none that I am writing or directing, but recently I've sort of shifted to producing films a little bit more. And recently I've been co-producing a feature film called The Medusa Box, which was largely shot towards the end of last year, so 2024. Got like one more shoot day coming up in about 2 weeks' time. And that is a feature film which is about letterboxing, which is sort of a hobbyist thing set on, which sort of originated on Dartmoor. It's sort of, you say it's sort of like geocaching, but it's not like geocaching. You sort of hunt for these boxes which are hidden all across Dartmoor, like using maps and orienteering. And then each box will have a stamp in it. And then the people finding these boxes will like stamp their own personal logbook. And then the letterboxers will also put their own unique stamp in a little notepad, which is in each letterbox. So yeah, it's a horror film set on Dartmoor, which hopefully it will be finished by the end of this year. Whether it's out this year or not, I don't know, but hopefully within the next year it should be ready.
It's that thing, isn't it? It's when you finish all the production part and then you realise you got to edit it, and that takes longer than you think.
Definitely. Well, I'm not editing it, thankfully, which is quite a nice feeling. 'Cause like pretty much on all of my films I have edited or co-edited. Even though, like I said, I wasn't writing or directing this one, it's still quite a nice thing not to be editing.
How have you found the process switching from directing and writing to then producing?
It's interesting in that most of my films, like I would have at least co-produced them, so I have done a lot of producing, but this was the first project where I was just a producer on it. So I had all the skills, sort of, I knew how to do a lot of the things already. It was just like making a feature film. It's like, I thought I'd probably produce some short films to begin with to sort of dip my toe into the water of producing, but nope, straight into producing a feature film. So that was like, there's like a 15-day shoot on that and stuff. So it's a lot of organisation. But it's sort of freeing that I didn't have to worry about, doing a shot list or a storyboard and stuff like that. So no, I have really enjoyed the process, actually. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the end result.
Yeah, hopefully it's released this year, but I feel like it's one of those things that you don't want to rush it, because if you rush it, you could make a mistake and it doesn't look as good as you want it to be. Really, it's just about having the patience with it. Did you say it's going to be released in local theatres, or is it going to?
Haven't decided yet. I mean, so the director, Rebecca Melvin Phillips, she's been working on it for 8 years, and so like you say about the thing about not rushing it, it's absolutely true in this case. That she's sort of said, like, if it takes 2 years to finish, so be it. I've sort of spent 8 years on this already. An extra year probably won't hurt that much.
Make it 10 years. Why not?
Make it 10 years.
Make it a decade.
But no, we haven't entirely decided the release plan. But what we'd love to do is some like site-specific screenings, certainly around Devon. Because like the film is set on Dartmoor, it'd be cool whether there's like opportunities to screen it sort of outdoors on Dartmoor, or like some of the local independent cinemas sort of around the county and stuff. And then whether it sort of can go on an online streaming platform, I think that's probably the ultimate aim. But it's kind of exciting just seeing where it ends up, to be honest.
Yeah, and even being a part of that process. You mentioned it took her 8 years. Did she start writing it then 8 years ago, and then bit by bit she's been working backwards and forwards, like coming to it and then going back on it, sort of thing?
I think the idea sort of originated 8 years ago, and then it's sort of been one of those that was worked on and off. I mean, she didn't write the script. She came up with the idea, and her friend sort of wrote it. Obviously, she's had input. Then sort of lockdown, obviously delayed it for a few years, and other issues. And it was like last year, it was sort of, right, now's the time to sort of press ahead and get on with it type thing. So it's definitely been a long process, but like, I think with films, it's sort of not uncommon that films can take years to develop and get into a place when they are ready to film, especially in feature films. You'll see it all the time where projects will start, thinks like they're happening, like maybe a director will be attached, the director will then leave, and then it's sort of back to nothing again, and they have to restart. And so it's not uncommon, and it can take years repeating that cycle to get stuff made.
When you mentioned COVID and the lockdowns, that's sometimes it doesn't feel like that ever happened.
It's like 5 years. 5
years. 5 years. Holy shit.
Scary, isn't it?
What were you doing during lockdown?
What was I doing during lockdown? I think I definitely did my. I I definitely did a few of the online film competitions and stuff like that, but nothing. And like, so Between the Lines, the musical I talked about, but we started developing it literally just before lockdown. So the first few months of that, we sort of chipped away at a few ideas, but then like possibly a lot of things that year, it was sort of abandoned and put to one side for until like a year later on. But yeah, I sort of like, I think lockdown, it wasn't an overly productive time for me as a filmmaker. But yeah, hopefully it won't happen again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers and touch wood, all of that doesn't happen again. I think it was quite scary, really, wasn't it? Because we never knew when it was ever going to end in a way. I remember we went through lockdown from March till September. Then it was like a tiered system all the way until Christmas. And we had another lockdown, or we had I think we had 2 or 3 lockdowns in total. But I remember there was one from January all the way to like, I want to say May, because it was that August is when I went to, that September even is when I came to uni. And I remember how fortunate I was that I actually was able to work during lockdown at Tesco's, and how I was looking to go to uni at that time as well, but I had to take a year out anyway. So it sort of worked out in my favour.
Yeah, no, because like we started filming Between the Lines sort of 2022, and there was definitely still, it was 21. I lose track now. 21? No, it's 2021, because like in sort of like August, when we sort of had our cast and crew meet up, there's definitely still restrictions. It was like you had to wear face masks indoors type thing. And then possibly just after that was, we still had to film it sort of under COVID restrictions when, like, I remember I pretty much had to wear a mask all the time, like inside anyway. So it's definitely still, it wasn't like a drastic thing, but we didn't have to like social distance on set. So it was like eased a little bit, but it was an experience making that film sort of in COVID conditions, which kind of, again, made it a bit more of a unique thing, I guess.
Yeah, do you have like a process for when you get into writing and stuff? You know, like some people, I think they not lock themselves away, but you know, they don't really go on their phone or anything, or they lock themselves in the library, or they just completely, you know, zone out of the world and just go straight into writing.
I mean, I've tried different processes. Generally, I'll always listen to music. I find that quite helpful. Whether it's like film scores or classical stuff, I find just having that in the background can help me focus. But often, like, my scripts take quite a long time to develop. I'm not one who will probably write solidly all day. I may write for an hour or two, and then that's it, done for the day. I'm not someone who could constantly write. I feel like writing with me, it's like I need to be in the right mood in order to do it. I'm not someone who just writes and writes and writes, even if it's terrible, and then you sort of go back and revise it. I've definitely got to be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, that's I'm sort of similar to you as well, actually, with the writing stuff. It comes in like inspiration moments, doesn't it, really? And you just smash out quite a bit, or like you have an idea, like, oh, this is brilliant. Let's just write this all down on the Google Doc sort of thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And then you don't forget about it, but you're like, okay, I'll leave it and I'll come back to it when it's right, sort of thing. Because the idea actually of the Google Doc process is what you told me last year, actually. Do you remember you did a talk for us for XTV?
I've got a massive Google Doc, so many ideas and like different bits and information, and just you never know when it could be useful, stuff like that. It's just interesting looking back on it every so often and seeing, oh yeah, that idea is quite good. Maybe I could sort of start developing that again at some point in the future.
Yeah. How many ideas for films have you had, do you think?
I don't know, to be honest. It's like some of them, it's sort of, you may just have like a simple log line where it's like, oh, that could be an interesting idea for a film, and it goes no further to sort of somewhere you sort of actively started maybe writing scripts, and then for whatever reason you sort of just put them in a drawer somewhere and sort of forgotten about them. But they're sort of still there if you did want to dig them out in the future type thing.
And do you ever have any ideas, not just for films, but like videos per se, you know, like a music video maybe, or, you know, something short or fun that could just be posted to YouTube?
Not at the moment. It's sort of, I feel like no is a simple answer. I know that's a terrible answer to your question, Tom. But
That's an honest answer. So
yeah, no, it's sort of, at the moment I'm quite enjoying, like I decided to focus on producing for a little bit, so I'm quite enjoying not having to write or direct anything for a little bit. Because I feel like being a creative, it's sort of, it doesn't happen 24/7, or at least for me it doesn't. It's sort of something which I have to be in the right frame of mind to do, and it's quite nice not feeling like the constant pressure of I've got to make a film, I've got to make a film. It's sort of probably when I feel ready again to make a film, inspiration will strike, and then it'll be the only thing I can think about, which I haven't quite got to that stage yet on any of the projects I've sort of had even initial like outlines for. So I'm just sort of seeing where the film journey goes at the moment, to be honest.
well, I think it's smart that you've got yourself a job, you know, it's like an income that you can rely on, and then when you've got the filmmaking in the background sort of thing, I think that's a very smart idea, because I think it's the is it like the struggle of the artist, and they normally just go straight in with like a you know, going from paycheck to paycheck, trying to make it like something that's inspirational to others sort of thing, and sometimes they then fall behind on, you know, paying rent and stuff sort of thing. So yeah, to have a main job and then to, you know, still doing the film work is actually a pretty good idea.
Thank you. No, it's true, and it's nice. It's a job related to film, and that it sort of obviously keeps me thinking about film pretty much every day of the week, and it's sort of, so yeah, I am appreciative.
That's good. Have you when it comes to actually helping the students and stuff, have you ever had any struggles or anything, you know, giving advice per se?
I mean, ultimately, I can give all the advice to the students that I think would benefit them, but it's up to them if they choose to implement it or not. Just like if I were to give feedback on sort of non-students' films, it's up to their individual filmmaker whether they choose to do anything about it or whether they completely disagree with me, which is totally fine. To be honest, ultimately it's their vision for the project. Like, hopefully some of the stuff I say will be useful, but equally you can't get too offended if they reject it completely. Because I know, like, even when people give feedback on my own films, like, people will say stuff which I will disagree with, you know. It may be that their suggestions would totally work. It's just not quite the way I see it for my vision of the film, which is fine, I think.
Well, it's about, you know, being able to take feedback, but also be able to stand up for what you think is right, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely. Like, the whole feedback process, I do quite enjoy, and like giving, especially comments on the edit and the script, because it gets me thinking about useful film things like structure all the time, and I can try and implement that in my own films. It's just a good thing to always think about.
It's quite scary, isn't it, really, realising that this is going to be put onto YouTube and that they actually might be listening to this as well.
Well, maybe it'll go viral.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it, really? I don't know, I don't think so.
I'll share it on my Instagram. When it goes out, you have to let me know.
Yeah,
I'll share it.
I'll send it over to you, because it's hopefully the earliest would be next Friday, because I try to keep this like an every Friday schedule sort of thing. Not film it every Friday, but upload it for every Friday, because then I can keep to that schedule, test myself to keep to that schedule, but also I can then do some in 1 week and then, you know, just schedule those for the weeks after sort of thing. And then when those weeks come around, I won't need to worry about having one filmed and edited by the end of the week, because things might, you know, get really busy or something else happens that changes my schedule. So.
Nice. Well, no, I look forward to seeing it, although I'm not sure if I'll be able to watch it back. As good as it is, Tom, I hate watching myself. I'm not sure how you edit yourself, to be honest.
I listen to music, or I just, you know,
what in the background.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually got told this when I was at NXTV a couple of years ago. the stage president at the time, he told me to just accept that your voice is going to sound shit, or you're just going to absolutely hate it. And I was like, do you know what? You're kind of right, mate. I just had to suck up a little bit and just get on with it. And like you, I edit it, post it, and I'll never see it again.
Yeah, it's sort of strange. It's sort of like slightly different, but like my own films, I find it really difficult to watch them. Like especially because I do edit most of them like myself. Like after having lived with those films for ages, I find it incredibly difficult to watch them, and I will only watch them if I'm sort of forced to at screenings now, type thing. Because I want to watch other films. I don't want to keep watching mine. I've seen them enough times. As happy as I am to have made them, and like how proud and stuff. Equally, it's like can't be dealing with it anymore. Want to move on.
It's quite nice to have watch parties when you make a film or release something like that. We had that when we did our dissertations. We had a nice. I know they did one at the Phoenix, but we did one in Queens, one of the parts of the Exeter campus, where we had like a nice big lecture theatre screen, and we had 2 or 3 films screened there. But it had like a nice 40, 50 people turn out, and it was people from the casting crew sort of thing. So it's like a big watch along together, and it was really nice atmosphere. You know, like you don't really like watching your film, but you sort of like, do you know what? You get to share this all together, and it's a really nice moment.
I absolutely agree. It makes it like we were saying earlier, it's like an achievement to finish the film in the first place, and it is just nice to get everyone who was involved, as many people as possible who are involved in the film, like there, and just have even like if like I said 40, 50 people is still enough to sort of generate a nice atmosphere and have a nice evening and stuff. So yeah, pretty much all the films I've done would always, as much as possible, have some sort of screening event for cast and crew for them.
Even the lightsaber one that you did.
Well, it was part of that. I had to give a little rough cut screening and like to friends, and there's only like 10 people or something. But I think I had to give a little presentation on it and sort of how it was all done. So yes, even the lightsaber one, there was, and it is on YouTube. It's sort of buried on a dark corner somewhere. So it's not on my main YouTube channel. I sort of set a different one up now, but it is up there. If you know what it is called, and you know a specific sort of thing to type in, you would be able to find it.
If you're an OG, you'd know.
Yeah. Again, I've not watched that one in a while.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's probably, like you say, for the best, isn't it? Really, not to go back to that. I think one of the things with filmmaking though is that you get so much opportunity with what you can learn. You know, writing, directing, producing, or learning how to use the cameras, the lighting, sound, editing. Near enough, it's not. I wouldn't say endless, but there's quite a lot there to really learn. And it's one of those things that when you look at now is the question of AI and how that's going to get involved into the industry. How do you see it shaping the industry?
That's an interesting question. I wonder with like the writing process, whether it will pretty much be completely generating scripts soon, and it may just be a human writer will come on at the end to sort of tidy stuff up. And it's already being used quite a lot in sort of VFX. Like there's lots of AI tools to assist creation of that, and like sound. Like if you're just thinking like noise reduction, that's technically sort of an AI tool, and it's sort of, you see it a lot about like early concept art now, which is being generated by AI. And then it's sort of the whole moral issue of is it just stealing certain people's work and slightly changing it, and you're just thinking, cool, AI has made this for me, without ever crediting the original artist. So it's an interesting thing. I'm a little wary of it, to be honest. I mean, I've not really delved too much into it, like personally on any of my projects, but it's something that I think is inevitable. It's not going anywhere.
No, and I feel like it will have an impact on the industry, but I don't think there'll be, people going out of losing jobs and stuff. I feel like we would always need people to use cameras and stuff. And I feel like there'd also, not to make cameras, but to actually use the cameras. But there'd always be people like directors that will always be rebelling against it, really. I feel like it's probably maybe more the studios, the big studios, that want to try and cut corners with their finances and stuff, that will probably try and do it. But yeah, I definitely think there will be directors, that will definitely stick by the standard way of making a film as opposed to trying to use AI.
Mm. And they're saying an interesting conversation about editing. Like they're saying a lot of editing could be done with AI, and like that hundreds of hours which would go into a feature film, it sort of could an AI bot or whatever churn out an edit within an hour or two, and then like your human editor would just come along and refine stuff. I mean, that would be an interesting change. But I think, like you said, there's always like AI. It probably isn't going to be using the camera for you. It's like it can't probably really direct the film at this stage. But it will be interesting to see how it develops.
Especially, it's quite interesting when you look on YouTube. You have the fan edits, if you will, with using AI as a tool to make some sort of like adaptation of like Breaking Bad or something. You have like I think it was Breaking Bad, but it's a Wild West film, or Breaking Bad, but it's the Mafia. And those type of videos are actually quite interesting to see how far AI has come, because I don't think it's that old, is it really? It's what, a couple of years, if that?
It's definitely getting more sophisticated as well, which it constantly will as it keeps learning from stuff. And it's sort of, it's not quite there yet. Like, I know the videos sort of things. It's like the interesting mashups. Like you see a lot of Wes Anderson ones. If like Wes Anderson does Lord of the Rings and it's sort of always Owen Wilson or whatever in playing Gollum. It's sort of, it is amusing. But yeah, as a YouTube mildly amusing thing, it's fine. But I don't think it's quite at the stage yet where it could properly take on a full sort of film production.
Well, you mentioned just about the editing process. I feel like I'd absolutely love it to do the podcast for me if it wants to. But yeah, that thing though, to seeing how far it would go in the next couple of years is always one that's quite interesting. Yeah. There's hopefully going to be other films coming out in the next couple of years. We've hopefully got Tarantino's 10th film, if ever he's going to make that.
Oh, it's 10th and last potentially. Is he threatening to do any more now? I don't know.
Are you a big fan of his stuff?
I don't dislike Tarantino. I wouldn't say he's like my favourite director. But I think Inglourious Bastards is probably my favourite Tarantino film, I reckon. Even The Hateful Eight didn't go much on. What's the latest one?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, didn't really get on with that one, to be honest. Yeah, Pulp Fiction as well. It's sort of, yes, it may be a classic, but I wouldn't sort of rate it as one of my favourite films type thing. It's sort of probably quite an acquired taste, sort of Quentin Tarantino, but, you know, he is a good writer. You can't sort of knock that.
No, you can't. Especially, he did a novel version of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I remember reading that after reading watching it for the first time, reading the novel and then going back to the film. I actually absolutely hated watching the film again.
Really?
Yeah, it's just that thing. I think when you watch it once, you try to give it a bit more time before you watch it again.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen the film once. I remember I haven't read the adaptation or whatever of it, but I don't know, there's just, maybe I was in the wrong mood to watch the film. I feel like that's probably maybe some films I watched it first time, didn't really dig it. Second time, it's like, oh my God, it's a masterpiece. It's just maybe sort of, yeah, some films I think you just got to be in the right mood to watch them.
I think films are definitely better to watch in the cinema though. You know, I think we watched it at work, Nosferatu, a couple of weeks ago. Have you seen that?
I haven't, no.
Highly recommend it. Fantastic horror film. Absolutely fantastic adaptation of the original. But yeah, even just seeing other films like the Brian, what's the new one? Bob Dylan one. One with Timothy Chalamet.
I know the one you mean. I can't remember what it's called.
A Complete Unknown. That was a good film to watch as well. I feel like you always find yourself enjoying a film more in the cinema. Like, even if you had to pay a little bit to watch it, it's always worth it.
No, I agree, because it's like no distractions. It's sort of so easy now to feel like watching Netflix. I'll just pause and I'll go on my phone. Whereas in the cinema, I'd feel like I never use my phone in the cinema. I'd feel like really guilty. If I see a screen like light up in front of me, it's sort of, get off your phone. But it just focuses the mind in that shared experience of like a packed cinema. Watching a film is quite nice. So I definitely hope it doesn't go anywhere. Obviously, there's often talk of like a changing way that we watch stuff, and even now people are saying maybe TV will die out because of the way you watch like Instagram Reels, or how people digest content, whether short YouTube things are the future rather than TV or feature films, which I certainly hope not. I feel like Reels aren't necessarily my thing. I'd certainly watch some funny ones, but I'd much rather watch a film or a TV series over them, I think.
Yeah, I really hope that doesn't ever become true, that Reels or TikTok or short form content overhauls the long form content of films or TV. Yeah, I know definitely the film industry took a big hit since COVID. I remember researching that for some of my essays I did at university, but it's still going. You know, I don't think it's as popular as it was, but I still have faith that it won't ever die out. You know, it's an art, isn't it? Really watching a film and enjoying it.
Absolutely. Like I think like film will always have ups and downs. There'll always be times where lots of stuff's being made, and that can often just be down to the economy. Like the studios that have much money to invest in films, less films are made. Seems like the industry's dying. Like just after COVID, there was a massive boom when all the productions started filming again. It's like, yeah, it's back, and now it's a bit of a lull at the moment because sort of there are there's just not as many productions being made, which is a shame. But I'm sure it'll uptick again soon. I think people always will make stuff now because it's so easy to get access to the equipment. And like you've got like free editing software, which is also used on Hollywood feature films now. And like cameras, like even your iPhone can do like a pretty decent recording now. So it's not as if you were like, we had to go back even 20 years where you probably still had to shoot things on film and sort of digest it into a computer. And if you didn't have an expensive camera and the tape deck, it wouldn't be possible. But now it's like seconds you could edit a film, upload it somewhere, and you're done.
It's crazy. You mentioned about the film being a tool to make films. Have you seen the new 28 Years Later that's coming out?
I've seen the trailer, yes.
If you look at the behind the scenes, there's this phone on the tripod. I mean, I know it's absolutely stacked out with like cinema lenses and everything around it to make it look like an actual camera, but it's like an iPhone that they're using for it, which is like incredible, really, when you think about how far phones have come in terms of using them as a filmmaking tool.
Yeah, I mean, like phones are pretty powerful now, the cameras that are packed inside them. So you can only see, it'd be interesting. It's like it's just blurring the lines between professional equipment and what's in your pocket. So it's sort of, it is a fascinating thing, and it'll be interesting to see where it sort of develops in the years to come. Whether it'll put some camera manufacturers out of business, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it gives them the challenge to then always improve upon what they're already building. You know, it's that thing of competition, isn't it? Trying to outsource your competitor and make a better version or better product than what they're making, sort of thing. But I feel like eventually cameras are going to be so expensive that people are just going to be buying phones instead and just using their phones instead to make films. I remember last year a guy came to me with his phone and he wanted to, you know, compare it to one of the cameras that we're using with XTV. And actually his phone was better than what we had, which was crazy to think, like crazy to say that. I was like, oh shit, like the equipment's quite outdated, but even then it's not like, you know, like 10, 20 years, it's like 4 or 5 years outdated, you know, compared to someone's phone, which is like, holy shit, this it transforms so quickly.
Film and technology will become outdated very quickly, that's the thing. Even like the change from like doing digital editing from previously cutting on film is a big change. And that came in probably the mid-90s and stuff. I couldn't imagine cutting on film. I'm not sure I'd have had the patience. But yeah, it's true. Like often what's in your pocket is more powerful than a lot of custom or specific cameras out there. So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think you would ever use a phone to make a film?
Yeah, probably at some point. Like I've definitely shot odd bits and pieces using a phone in the past. Nothing that I've sort of would call a proper film, but it's sort of definitely experimented around with phones and stuff. I'm sure in the future, like I said, if a phone looks like a pretty attractive option, when it's sort of in your pocket and you don't have to spend thousands on extra lenses or monitors and stuff, it's definitely a good option. Because I think probably lighting is one of the biggest factors, and it can make one of the biggest differences to your film in how well it is lit. It doesn't really matter what you probably shoot it on. If it's well lit, and then your film will probably look a million times better.
And if the sound is good as well.
And the sound as well. Classic student film, overlook the sound.
Yeah, oh god, and you have you have to turn up in post, and you hear all the background noise and stuff, or I think you can actually hear it now. I don't know if it's me or it's my headphones, maybe. Hoping it's the headphones and not the actual mic, but I have like a little hissing sound.
Maybe those who are watching can comment, can they hear the hiss?
Or when I find out, when I'm editing it, I'll be like, oh shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But no, it's true though that sound can often get really overlooked. Like you get focused so much on the visuals that sound is sort of the forgotten element, which I think is a shame. And I think a lot of people will forget a bad image or a shot which may be slightly overexposed or underexposed. But I think like a glaring sound error when you can't hear like dialogue or a key bit of information is sort of much more noticeable. And like your average audience member, that will probably be a much bigger issue for them.
One that I've definitely picked up from you guys in the creative disc last year was ADR and how important that is. I never realised how good and beneficial that can be. I know it can be quite challenging to try and get it perfectly lip synced, but I was quite lucky that we had software at work that we could use, that we could do several takes, and the actor could actually watch that scene in the film, and then they can like remember what they said and then say it in sync with what they were saying. And although they were going crazy because they've heard the background quote so many times, they actually eventually get it quite perfect. And do you know what, when you do it really well, when you do it in like a studio similar to like this type of studio, you have like no sound coming in, people actually never realize that you've done ADR.
No, it can be like a way you can completely change your film for the better. It can like ADR is commonly used to like fix any plot holes. And sometimes you can tell an ADR line when it's sort of the actor's mouth maybe not be moving, they're off camera. Because obviously they don't have the coverage of that actor saying the lines, so they have to try and sneak it in somewhere. So when you kind of can spot it sometimes, and like sometimes equally, the mics will sound different. Because like I said, recording in this room that we're in now is very different to recording out in a windy field. And it's definitely quite the art to match ADR into your initial production audio if you're trying to get both sound sources in the same scene. It's sort of ADR is brilliant, but that's when it also can really stand out if you don't know what you're doing in post-production.
I think it's funny when you watch these films, especially the ones that have dubbed, and the dub is absolutely terrible. Like they're speaking like, and then they speak, and you hear the dialogue 5 minutes later, and it's like, oh, it looks so bad. But you sometimes have to, sort of cringe at it, and then sort of change it back to its original language, and actually just use the subtitles instead.
Yeah, I as a rule, I try not to watch dubbed things. I'd much rather watch it in the original language with subtitles. That's my personal preference.
Do you think you'd ever make a film abroad?
I'd love to make a film abroad. It's sort of getting abroad, which is sort of the issue. It would be an interesting thing, sort of seeing about film permits or things like that. But I've no current ideas to make a film abroad, but definitely never say never.
No, that's good. That's good to keep an open mind. Have you ever been abroad?
Yes, I went to Denmark and Sweden last year. That was the last time I went abroad, I think. So yeah, that was a nice little potter around Copenhagen and stuff. So
yeah,
but yeah, there's definitely lots of places I hope to travel to at some point.
Where would you think you'd go next?
Well, it's sort of where to go next and where I want to go next is sort of different questions. It's like I said, Lord of the Rings, big fan. New Zealand is sort of number one on the bucket list of places to go. I think Australia is, Japan, America's quite high up there. But maybe a little closer to home, I think Finland or Germany are two places I've never been before, which I'd quite like to go to as well.
Yeah, Europe's quite good because it's relatively cheap, especially compared to like the US, which is what something like £1,500, £1,600 just to fly over there. I remember in my second year of uni, I had a friend. She couldn't go home for Christmas because of how expensive it was, even just for a single ticket to go back home. You know, she sort of had to stay in Exeter and sort of be by herself, which was quite sad, really, in a way.
Yeah, it's like Europe now. It's sort of, it's not that, it's like cheaper to fly to places than get a train in the UK. It's ridiculous. But yeah, no, it's kind of, you can get to, especially like not too far from Bristol Airport, which is where I've flown from a couple times, like 2 hours away or something. Get a cheap EasyJet flight, and you're sort of within 2 to 3 hours of a lot of major European places. So
Yeah, it's brilliant. Honestly, I didn't realise how good or how lucky we are to have an airport so close to us. Because what's the closest one after that? London?
wow, we got Exeter Airport, but
Oh yeah, but
it's sort of expensive, and they don't go anywhere I want to go, to be honest. So
yeah, they fly to somewhere that's like,
they're sort of more package holiday destinations, or it's very expensive to go anywhere from there, and so it's probably just cheaper to go to Bristol and go from there.
yeah, as opposed to going to Exeter to fly from. Yeah, how long have you lived? You Devon, born and
Pretty
raised.
much Devon all my life, other than a little trip to university for a couple of years. Yeah, born in Devon. It's sort of a county which I think, even if you leave it, I think a lot of people do find themselves coming back to it just because it's quite nice. Like Exeter's a nice city. You've got like places like Dartmoor. You've got coastline sort of within an hour. Pretty much of anywhere within the county, you're like an hour away from that sort of thing. So it is a nice place to live. I'm not sure I'm built for sort of London life or something like that, to be honest.
It's quite interesting to hear you say that because most people, when they finish uni here or they finished working in Devon for a couple of years, they really just want to go to London.
Interesting.
And then I think it's maybe that thing of there's always that idea or promise that there's a career out in London as opposed to in Devon. Where did you go to uni?
Staffordshire University,
Where's that?
just north of Birmingham.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Educational, see?
It is, yeah, you learn something every day. Yeah. What did you study there?
I studied film and post-production. So yeah, it's interesting, like we were speaking a little bit before sort of recording this about now being a lecturer, being on the other side of it. It is an interesting thing.
What was it, the course like?
Bits of the course good, bits of it not so good. But I did love the uni experience as a whole. That was sort of, I think, my favourite thing, and getting out and just seeing somewhere a bit different.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that one there. I remember when I visited a friend who came to Exeter, who I'd known from college. I had really no intention of going to uni at all. And I came down to visit him just to see him for like a weekend. And I remember I turned up, I was like, this place is absolutely fantastic. You know, I sort of fell in love with Exeter, you know, the weekend I was here. And then I was like, do you know what? I have to come here after after college. And what, 2-3 years later, here I am. And yeah.
I know it is a good. Exeter is a nice city, and it is a nice campus. The main one at the university. It's often sort of said to be one of the nicest campuses in the country, type thing. And there's so many sort of parts of it which I've not even been to. It's a massive place. But yeah, no, it is a nice place to come and do your thing.
What would you say is your biggest fear when it comes to making films? You know, I think a common one that I found in myself and then from hearing from others is that judgment of others of what you make, sort of thing. Do you have like a personal one?
I mean, I don't really. I mean, you want people to enjoy your films, but I've never been one to care that much because it's sort of like everyone's got different tastes and stuff. I just hope it gets out there to some people who like the film. And yeah, it is what it is. Like, you're never going to make the perfect film which appeals to everyone. So you sort of have to accept that early on. And I think if you can't, then it's probably difficult to get over that. But yeah, I just try and set out, make the best film I can, hopefully with a good group of people. Everyone has a good time. and then if people like the film at the end of it, great. I hope they do. But yeah.
And if they don't, it's what it is. You've done what you can.
Tough. Yeah, that's all you can do. Is sort of like, I think certainly in my films, I realise there's already so many things I would want to do different anyway, and sort of I feel like we do like this, some of the student work when you sort of evaluate what you've done and what you would do differently. There's sort of something that I feel all the time on my films of things I would want to do different. It's like, oh, why didn't I do that? And it seems so obvious looking back in hindsight, or when you're sort of reviewing an edit, sort of, oh, you missed that shot, or I wish I shot that scene that way. It's just in the moment when you've got so much else going on, it sort of can be difficult.
But it's that thing. That's the power of hindsight, isn't it? And wisdom. I think.
Absolutely.
I think one for me is when you edit a film so many times, you hear all the lines, every single cue, whether it's a music cue or a cut sort of thing, and then you watch it at like a watch party and you just desensitized to it because you've watched it so many times. Do you ever find yourself having that a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's sort of something I'm always, like we do at the university as well, have a rough cut screening to get feedback on the film. It's sort of still an early-ish stage when you can do something about it for like the exact reason that you mentioned. It's sort of really hard to watch a film objectively when you've heard those lines of dialogue so many times. And you just can't watch it without sort of, you just need fresh eyes on it really to give new feedback on it, which is something I always do on my films.
Do you think you would ever, not like a memoir, but maybe make a film dedicated to someone in a way, or that's dedicated from a memory with someone? You know, I think for me, my creative diss was sort of inspired by my great granddad and his sort of life in a way with my great nan. I mean, it wasn't what they had or, you know, using any of their memories as part of the film, but it was that concept idea of, you know, looking back on life sort of thing with someone that you used to be, someone that was your wife, and having something that was so precious sort of thing. Do you ever think you'd ever have something like that?
I mean, like some of my films, there's definitely elements from my life or other members of the family which I've sort of drawn from, but it's none of it's sort of directly biographical type thing. I'm not sure I'd ever possibly make a film like that, but I feel like one of the things I say about writing is write what you know, and like if you take from your own personal experiences, because like no one else will probably know that story as well as you, and so you can like more, well, like writing's never easy, but you can probably more easily put those emotions into the characters if you sort of felt them yourself. And so yeah, there's definitely, like I said, whether I ever make a proper, not autobiographical film, I don't know, but I think I'm always going to draw from my own life, the good and the bad, and put that in my films.
Well, it makes the film unique, doesn't it? Having your own.
Well, that's it. You are you, and stuff like that. You can't sort of, no one knows your life better than you do. And so yeah, that's what you want, sort of an authentic filmmaking voice. Like you talk about AI sort of copying different stuff, like no one could beat your own initial writing or your own directing or vision for a film. That's something that AI can never sort of replace or take away, is it?
No, and you'd never want it to, because I think that's part of what makes art so meaningful, isn't it, really? Because it's taken apart from your experiences, and whether it is good or the bad, you know, that you can really use that emotion and that experience to create something that you really truly enjoy and love.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think mine's gone a bit blank actually at the moment. Yeah. Do you think you would ever look back maybe in 20, 30 years' time and just really appreciate what you've made sort of thing and how far you've come?
I hope so. Like I said, stuff like when I mentioned the fort box earlier about building a whacking great big cardboard box fort, that was just a lot of fun. And that's sort of like making a film and organising an event, which lots of people came along to. Like obviously after doing so many risk assessments to get an event like that on. And that is something I'm still proud of that I managed to achieve. And sort of, so I think that's something I probably would look back on in years to come and go, hey, we did do that. And it did actually happen. It's sort of preserved on film. And sort of one of the fascinating things one of the things I've sort of been doing recently is like looking at my family tree, and you sort of seeing pictures of people that you never knew they were sort of gone before you were even born type thing, but also looking around like just local history and like photographs of like the town I grew up in and just seeing it. And you wonder about, you just see it in a photograph when you don't know the names of the people in the photograph, and you wonder about their lives that they lived. And like now they're just a memory. And odds are a lot of it, there's probably no real documentation about the lives they lived. So it'll be interesting in like 100 years' time, if my films still exist, whether there's some sort of Crediton, which is my hometown, film archive where I shot Fort Box, whether there'll be like a film history society looking back on the history of film in Crediton, and they'll dig this film out from somewhere. That sort of idea fascinates me.
Yeah, that is
Like,
quite. Sorry.
slightly egotistical, but I think it's an interesting thought to like, because like films, like feature films, will there's some like you think some massive feature films will be around for ages, but like equally now you think how many people would actively seek out the Oscar-winning films from the 1920s or 30s? There may be a few classics, but there's probably not that many. And so in 100 years' time, the films which are massive now, are they going to be, they will be probably distant memories. And they've probably already been remade several hundreds of times since then. But yeah, I just think it's fascinating thinking about legacy and what's left behind and stuff like that.
It's nice to sometimes see though films from that era, like the 20s through to the 60s and 70s, still are, you know, part of our everyday, or not everyday, but they're still, you know, recycled and they still see them on TV and stuff. I think a good one that I watched for the first time recently over Christmas was It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
And that was, I want to say 1942, 1944?
Yeah, 40s, I think.
Something like that. And it actually is a fantastic film. You know, one of those films that I hope will stand the test of time.
I think there's something like that when it's, 70 odd years old now, 70, 80. And it's still sort of shown every Christmas and sort of being introduced to new generations. Sort of like The Wizard of Oz. Obviously you got Wicked, which was recently released, but The Wizard of Oz is like, what's that, 1930 something?
Yeah.
About 85 odd years ago now. And it's still obviously a beloved film and stuff. And I think like stuff like Mary Poppins or things like that are still going to endure. But it will be interesting. You think of so many films, are they just going to get lost? And the idea of sort of preserving films is an interesting idea. Because like a lot of films now will solely exist in a digital way on a hard drive or two. And the idea of like obviously stuff shown on Netflix or Disney Plus, if like obviously stuff on those platforms comes in and out, if it's suddenly removed off Netflix and it's not available anywhere, like, and you don't have a copy of the film, is it sort of lost?
You have to pay money to go to see it on YouTube or Amazon Prime, and then.
Oh yeah, but like, what if they don't exist at all? What if there's no copies available of the film?
Does that film? Yeah,
That's the interesting thing that like we're saying about like films now moving to digital. Like the way to preserve a film is to put it on film, because obviously it's an analog medium. The film will last a while. All you need is a projector and it will work. Whereas you think of constantly updating technology, what if the films that play on computers now won't play on the computers in like 30 years' time or something?
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
It's an interesting thing. How films, maybe it's not forever. The films you make may just exist in that moment for a few years and then be lost forever. Scary as that and depressing as that sounds.
I don't think it's depressing in a way. I guess it depends on your motivations with making a film. Are you trying to make a film that you think will last forever, or are you making it because you generally enjoy it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just do it because I enjoy it, and hopefully other people will as well.
Yeah, like you said, you can't always get everyone to fully appreciate what you make, sort of thing. But I think something that I recently enjoyed doing with the creative this film was after the film had finished, I printed out these little photo stills, sort of thing, from like some photos we did behind the scenes. And I remember giving it to everyone that was part of the production, And I think for me, that's more just looking back on it in like 10, 20, 30 years. Remember that you did that sort of thing, as opposed to having a lasting legacy with that film. I feel like I don't think the film's even got that many views on YouTube. I just posted it for like a portfolio, as part of my portfolio sort of thing. And yeah, I think I'm happy that I got the chance to make it, really. And I know that I'm happy knowing that won't ever, be a lasting part of my legacy. Or I guess it will be. I guess everything that you make and everything that you do is a part of your legacy, isn't it, really? And I guess that's, why you've got to try and do as much as you can within the life you got, sort of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, do you have any plans to make more films, or?
The Google Doc has got a lot of ideas written on it.
Excellent.
I think for me, I saw a video recently from this filmmaker who's on YouTube that I watched called Danny Gavitz, and he recently made a video, or did a couple of years ago, that said just make films for the fun of it. If they're wacky and a bit, shit in terms of the narrative sort of thing, just do it for a bit of fun. So I had an idea recently, and I've sort of put a little bit of a script together, and I've asked the tech team what they thought, sort of thing. And to be honest with you, I think it would be quite fun just to film it. I'm not expecting it to be a masterpiece in any sense of the word, but I think just to have a little bit of fun and do something that's a bit outside of just the normal 9 to 5 or 9 to 5 work schedule sort of thing. It's nice to have these little bit extras.
No, very true. It's sort of, you never know what will catch an audience now on YouTube. All it will take is someone to get it in front of the right person, and it'll get shared around a couple of times, and it'll go viral. And so the thing that's just key is just to make stuff and not worry too much about the end result. If people see it, they will see it. And you see even big Hollywood films, they'll just make stuff. They'll obviously hope people will come and see it and make a big profit for them. But it doesn't always work out that way.
You just summed up Marvel then, didn't you, really? Yeah, Marvel's... Did you watch their films, Marvel?
Oh, yes. Sort of could have ended at Endgame, let's face it.
Yeah.
I mean, Endgame, maybe a couple of the others. I thought, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was all right and stuff. But if you ended it on Endgame, I think it would have cemented its probably legacy as one of the perfect
endings to a franchise in a way, really.
It just wrapped it up, didn't it? It wrapped all the main characters up. It left it open-ended if you could want to tell your own stories in your imagination. But now it just feels a bit aimless and directionless. And now they're bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. It's stuff like that. I think Chris Evans coming back as well. I think maybe.
Really? Chris Evans? I know they brought Robert Downey Jr. back. I was about to mention because he's Dr. Doom.
Yeah, and it just feels what can we do? Hey, Tony Stark. I know it's different, but he was obviously the popular character, and it's we'll bring him back, and it just feels a bit aimless now.
I think it's because they produce so much content. I feel like you're sort of caught in this conundrum of trying to make something that's actually quite unique or different. When we had the Infinity War Endgame stuff, we had that whole entire year to wait, as opposed to having a film every couple of months, and that was actually a brilliant film, both of them. I think I preferred Infinity War.
I think Infinity War is the better film. Endgame's still good, and it's still a satisfying ending, but I think Infinity War is the better film. It's a bit like Star Wars, to be honest, and the same with that and all the endless TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Which I haven't watched the latest few, but I feel since Disney took over, there's probably only... I'd argue Rogue One and maybe the first 2 series of The Mandalorian, possibly Andor, are the only good productions they've made.
Have you seen the Clone Wars, the final season of Clone Wars?
I haven't seen that.
That's good. I think that's actually the last thing I watched from the Disney Star Wars stuff, because that ended the season that never got finished in the initial launch of it. That finished up that season that was in the initial that wasn't in the initial sequence when they were releasing it, and they did it quite well. I mean, there were some episodes that were a bit filler and you found yourself sort of not falling asleep, but a bit mind numbing, but it did it such a perfect ending to it. And then I was like, I think that's it for Star Wars for me, because the Book of Boba Fett came out and I thought that was a bit wacky in a way. He's supposed to be this badass bounty hunter.
Boba Fett is one of my favourite Star Wars characters. He was great in The Mandalorian, and then they took him in the Book of Boba Fett, and the story they came up with, it just didn't quite fit this badass bounty hunter who's meant to be one of the most dangerous people in the galaxy, and it just didn't quite work. And then you had those stupid people on the scooters.
That's why I got a big smile on my face about to mention that.
Scooters. It's sort of, and it's like the best bits of the Book of Boba Fett was when they brought the Mandalorian back in Grogu, and it's a shame because, like I said, it could have done something really interesting with it. But yeah,
It is what it is, eh? It is what they've done with it. Dom, that made it an hour and 15. I know you've got a train to catch.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Have you got any social medias that you want people to follow you on or find you on?
Well, my website is domley.co.uk. You can find me on Instagram. I am on X, but I don't use it anymore. So yeah, maybe Instagram is probably the best place, or through my website, should you wish to come and say hello.
Thank you, Dom.